Now, down south towards the Sydney Basin and the Central Coast, the weather, of course, has turned very miserable. Warragamba Dam, as I mentioned earlier, has started to spill, and evacuation warnings are actually in place for multiple Sydney suburbs as the southern parts of New South Wales face bracing now for a very, very severe night of weather ahead. The New South Wales Deputy Premier, Paul Toole, joins me now from the State Operations Centre in Homebush. Thanks for joining us, Paul. You must be worried about what's unfolding around Sydney and in the Hawkesbury catchment. What's your latest advice as to what you could be facing overnight?
Yeah, that's right, Chris. Things are escalating, and I have to say to people that we need to make sure that people are alert. There's already been text messages that have started to go out this afternoon asking people to leave their homes. We are seeing that rainfall that has continued right throughout the day. It is going to continue into the night and into tomorrow. And what we're seeing at the moment is when you have a look at the March 2021 floods, the Warragamba Dam saw around 460 gigalitres a day going over the dam wall. We've actually got our worst fears. At the moment, we're seeing over 600 gigalitres of water going over the dam wall. So it is a lot higher than the water that we saw in March of 2021. So it's going to be a tough night. I say to people, if you are asked to leave home, you get a text message, please do it immediately. We want to save lives and we want to make sure we're protecting people.
Well, people in Penrith, in Windsor, in Richmond, they don't need any reminding, having had floods, as you say, just a year ago. So they've got to be very, very mindful of what is facing them tonight. But also the southern parts of Sydney around the Georges River. I believe there's been some evacuations there around Chipping Norton and the like.
Yeah, that's right, Chris. If you have a look at the Georges River, again, it is going to likely exceed the levels that we saw in March of 2021. So there are already evacuations in place. People have started to move out of their homes in a number of those areas. Again, we're saying to people, just don't risk it. It's not fair to actually stay in your home and say that you believe that the last flood didn't come to your property. If you're asked to leave, you're asked to leave for a reason. Do not risk it. Do not risk the lives of our police and our emergency service personnel that are out there working tirelessly. And we don't want to see those situations where people are on the top of their roofs waiting for that support and that help to get into them.
And Paul, how badly stretched New South Wales emergency services?
Well, they are stretched, and I think it's an amazing effort that's going in at the moment. I mean, our SES are doing an amazing job right across this state. We've got volunteers that have come from various parts of the state. They've come from inland New South Wales to lend assistance. We've got police out there on the ground. We've got other emergency service personnel, fire and rescue, the Rural Fire Service. We've had the support of the ADF. We're not out of this. There is a long way to go. And I say to people, we need to make sure that we are vigilant. This is going to be a tough night for our people here in New South Wales, and we don't know what's going to happen with this rainfall that is continuing to fall quite heavy in some of our catchment areas.
Thanks for joining us, Paul. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Paul Toole there, who's the Deputy Premier of New South Wales. Worst weather feared in the Central Coast, the Sydney Basin and South Coast of New South Wales tonight. You heard then that the flooding situation is already bad in many areas. If you're in those areas, you must obey the warnings. Listen out for the warnings in the rest of Sydney. Best to stay home and out of the weather as much as possible. We'll get an update on what's forecast for tonight in Sydney later in the program, and we'll get to keep you up to date with developments there, with 4 deaths now in the New South Wales flooding, adding to the 9 confirmed deaths in Queensland.